We are on 27th February 1907. We are in Burgas, and that is the moment when Jung meets Freud and Freud meets Jung. It is a religious crush, how Jung would define the meeting. We are talking about a 13-hour-long meeting in which the two discussed several topics within the field of psychoanalysis, but also Jung looked for some sort of advice from Freud on his involvement in his extramarital affair. Jung was married, and at the time he was involved also with some patients, something you would not consider nowadays completely ethical. Actually, you might get disbarred if you do that. But at the time, the borders between the psychotherapist and the patients were much less well defined than nowadays. And anyway, they met, they discussed several topics. Jung starts referring to Freud as father, and Freud sees in Jung a son. Also, Freud is slightly more long-sighted from that standpoint, okay? Because up until that point, psychoanalysis is running the risk of being exclusively a Jewish business. In Freud's terms, that is a Jewish science. And to have a Swiss Protestant within the circle is not only welcomed by Freud, but it is also what Freud was actually looking for. A way to expand, to make psychoanalysis less regional, less confined to a circle, his circle, and more international. And so the two get along very well. I'm sure Freud recognized the potential. He talks about Jung in glorious terms. You have to consider there's only the necessity of that one meeting for Freud next year to appoint Jung as the chief of the Association of Psychoanalysis, right? So certainly he's struck by Jung's ambition and profundity in thinking psychoanalytic topics and arguments, but certainly, you know, the fact that Jung was this young or younger guy, the fact that Jung adored and manifested his adoration towards Freud, those are elements that to Freud are initially more than sufficient to appoint him as the chief of the association, as in charge of the association. And so again, Jung refers to this relationship as a religious crush, something that, you know, should have warned a little bit at least Freud, considering what he wrote in reference to religion. Still, Jung talks about the father complex, seeing Sigmund Freud as this father figure from whom he's gonna get all of disadvantages, sure, but advices, conversations, and so on and so forth. So there's this portray that is idyllic, and then things go along a slippery slope and they quickly degenerate. So the reasons, I mean, we could have a psychoanalytic reading of why things degenerated in terms of their friendship. Number one, we could ascribe as a reason to the degeneration of the situation, we could ascribe fear, anxiety, right? There's a lot of anxiety. Certainly in Jung, there's anxiety of being inferior. He cuts short a trip on a bike in Italy because he has this dream one night that he's gonna always be inferior. That's how he interprets anyway that dream, and rushes back home to finish off the book, right? So there's this idea, you know, I have to do what I have to do, my book, I have to establish myself on a pair with Freud, not being seen as the one that is the protege, always an inferior level compared to Freud. So there's this urgency in Jung to demonstrate to himself and the world who he is. So that's fear and anxiety. Fear and anxiety from the standpoint of Freud, well, certainly because he did not want to be the Jewish guy who ran a Jewish circle of something called psychoanalysis, but restricted specifically to the Jewish tradition. He wanted psychoanalysis to have breadth, to be able to cross boundaries, right? In order to do that, he had to insert foreigners and foreigners' thinking and thoughts in psychoanalysis. So that would be Jung. It wouldn't just be Jung, but in this conversation we're having right now, it will be Jung. Third point, fear and anxiety of further pushing away some members within the psychoanalytic field. The more Freud and Jung put forward their ideas, the more a certain personal, friendly relationship got strained, you know? Not everybody was willing to accept the radicalness of their theories, and that goes for Jung as well as for Freud. Freud also had a terrible reputation, right? The society in Vienna kind of hated Freud, considered Freud a charlatan. So it was more than normal that there was always some sort of fear and anxiety in Freud to be seen as the one radical, the one extremist that says all of these things about sex, libido, topics that at the time were completely taboo. Today, they're now so much taboo, they still are, but to a different degree. At the time, it was completely madness to think that somebody could be thinking of sex in those terms, could be publish of sex in those terms, and be accepted in that society. That was absolutely impossible, right? And so there's this constant fear and anxiety. So that's primarily, you know, the beginning of their relationship. That's why when they meet each other, they kind of find comfort in each other. And then, I mean, this is 1907. 1911, you can kind of foresee what's gonna happen. 1912 is the year of the consummation of the split. It all starts in 1909. They both go to the United States. They deliver lectures there. At a certain point, Freud would faint, and Freud would say that this was Jung wishing him to die. This is a comment that Freud makes because at this very point in time, Jung is the one that certainly is taking his own space, kind of like growing apart, especially when it comes to issues like how do we consider libido? Is libido exclusively a sexual drive? And the answer would be a straightforward yes for Freud, but absolutely not for Jung. Jung would consider this a mental energy, and that kind of like destroyed Freud's castle. It would be one of the main criticism, right? If you look at Freud's theory, think sex, and libido only in sexual terms. But Jung is the one that really voices this criticism, right? Jung starts voicing this father figure that cannot be contradicted, that cannot be scrutinized, right? So it becomes a sort of cult, that of Freud's. And the same, even worse, would be for Jung, right? They would become cult leaders of two specific sects within psychoanalysis. but in different times and in different ways, certainly. And Jung is the one that first voices the criticism. Jung is the main exponent of that criticism just because it is, again, inside, initially at least, Freud's circle. The second big theme would be religion, right? So here is where they detach some more. Because of their different views, and because certainly, Jung cannot accept this form of interference from Freud into a field that is specifically Jung's field, or what Jung believed it was his own field, right? And so this is not well digested, and in the 40 years of after 1912, their relationship would not exist. They would not talk to each other, but in not talking to each other, they always sort of like, through publishing their own work, responded to each other's theory. So it's an ongoing relationship, although there was no written communication. But let's go back to religion, right? As we know, Freud thinks that the birth of religion has to be ascribed to the concretization of the Oedipus complex, right? It is the idea that the sons at a certain point killed the father, and then the father became represented through this totem, to this totemic figure, and that was the secret, and not to be disclosed. And that's how religions were born, according to Freud. For Jung, it's completely different. For Jung, the father in a religion is the source of all energy, right? So the restructure of the Holy Trinity in terms of ego and superego that is ongoing in Jung's work exactly is exactly the opposite of what Freud was projecting out, right, in his work. And so it is sex and religion that determine that split that would be irrevocable, and it would be absolutely certain and sort of ruined their relationship, their fruitful relationship, because it still was fruitful in the fact that they continued to respond, but it ruined the friendly terms through which it started, right? And it seems that the intensity, the initial intensity, was also the reason why this split was consumed for over 40 years through publishing work, and it was so filled with rage. Okay, that's it, guys. That's all for this video, so we're gonna talk again next time in a new video. But if you have enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll talk soon. Bye.